How now, brown cow? The arsonist has oddly shaped feet. The Human Torch was denied a bank loan. Oh, that was live. And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Strategy Show. It is Monday, July 19th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We have an 11-game MLB slate to break down, which should be fun. I'm pretty excited about it. Adam, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Excited to be back to work, I guess. I had almost a full weekend off, so that was nice. And now excited to be back and talking about baseball.
It's interesting. As much as like we could not want to do certain things, I'm never thinking to myself on a Sunday like, oh no, work tomorrow, it's Monday, which is that's the way I got to treat myself in my head. Like, it used to be worse. Yeah, exactly.
Like, sometimes I'll wake up on Monday, hungover and not exactly want to do a show, but it's never like when I had an actual job and it would be like, oh man, right, I have to work tomorrow.
Right. You just, you prep your baseball. It's not all that bad. You do an hour show. It's really easy to do. You can't complain too much. 60 concurrent viewers, 21 likes. Make sure you're hitting that like button as you get in the door. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell as well. And shout out to PrizePicks, the presenting sponsor of this show. We will talk a little bit about PrizePicks in the future. But for now, I think it's time to get it started. What do you think?
Yeah, let's go.
First game up on the docket. I hope you and I have the same information here. Nationals and Marlins. I've got it as basically a coin flip game with a 9-run total. John Lester on the hill for the Nats. Nick Neidert on the hill for the Marlins, or are you prepping that differently?
I didn't have a pitcher, so sounds good to me.
Okay.
Neidert, MLB.com doesn't have a pitcher for either team.
That's the best. Truly the best. I got both of those from Fangraphs, I believe. But let me double check it just in case. But that is the direction I'm going. And it should be a little easier to just say this. I don't get the sense that I'm taking Nick Neidert or John Lester. The only difference is Neidert is the flat 4K on DraftKings. Do you expect to get to either one of those pitchers if they are in fact the starters for today?
I don't even know who the Miami guy is, but no, I don't expect to get to Lester. I mean, it's the matchup against Miami is okay, but Lester just not a pitcher that I typically get to anyway, and just has seemed pretty washed this year, striking out 12.5% of right-handed hitters, 192 expected ISO to righties. Just, I don't think a spot that I'm going to get to.
Well, then, since you're not going to get to Lester and you don't know who Nick Neidert is, does that make you interested in either of the offenses? No one in the projected lineups right now is projected for more than 9% ownership. Nobody into double digits. I think there's a little bit more here that you can get to, though. How do you feel about the bats?
I'm interested in Miami right-handed power. We'll have to wait and see what that lineup looks like because Garrett Cooper was injured at the end of their game yesterday. Jazz Chisholm also injured and definitely won't, or I'm pretty sure won't be playing today. Left the field in tears yesterday. So I don't know exactly what the lineup will look like, but if Cooper's in, he'll look pretty good. Adam Duvall, Jesus Aguilar, Starling Marte, like that group of guys is, I think, in a pretty good spot against Lester. The problem is that they're also really expensive. Like normally you can look to Miami when they're in a pretty good spot and say, oh, there's some cheap power here, but you're paying, upper 4K range on DraftKings for Duvall and for Marte, Cooper at 4,100, Aguilar at 3,900. So not the most favorable pricing on Miami.
Yeah, they're a little bit pricier than I would have expected. To me, though, not the worst spot in the world. You can get a lot of nice, at 5% ownership, it's certainly not a stack you're mad about getting to. That's for sure. It just might not be the priority of all priorities. Just checking out the top stacks tool for right now. We've got Miami basically neutral in comparison to their current ownership share. The Nats, even worse than that. Are you getting to any Nationals bats against Nick Neidert or whoever the hell ends up being the starter for the Marlins?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it depends who's pitching, but I'm kind of surprised the top stack percentage for Washington's as low as it is. They do have like a 4.3 implied run total, which isn't that high, but the middle of that order, it's kind of always, it's kind of the same thing like every slate, it seems like with this team right now. Trey Turner, Juan Soto, Josh Bell, all are pretty much always good plays, and then everyone else on the team kind of sucks. So it ends up not being the most appealing 5-man stack. But using those guys individually, I think is perfectly fine.
Anybody else that we need to talk about in this particular game? Like, I don't see anybody that is just a no doubt about it play or like cash game type locks. You could always take shots on power like Soto or Bell. Duvall in this case in a nice spot against the lefty, Aguilar as well. But to me, like, I'm probably just getting to one-off opportunities here, maybe some stray Marlin stacks, but this game just feels like it doesn't exist. It feels like the total on the game is wrong and it's keeping everybody lower somehow.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Like the way things are right now, this game just doesn't strike me as something that'll be a big part of my night. But if, the Marlins confirm your guy, Nick Neidert, and the total goes, the implied run total for the Nats goes from 4.3 to, 5, then obviously they're going to show up a little bit more for me. But yeah, I mean, the pricing, like I think in terms of just like what I'd be most interested in here, it's Soto and Turner from the Nats, and then it's the right-handed power on the Marlins. But the problem is it's all so expensive that I don't think any of it ends up being a big part of my night.
Favorite hitter in this game? I don't care which team. Like, who do you think you would end up with the most if you were going to get a hitter in this game?
Either Soto or Turner. Like Soto would be my favorite, but he's also an outfielder, and Turner is a shortstop, so relatively a little bit more valuable.
Okay. I think mine might be Starling Marte, but just if I'm going to spend 4,800 there, I don't know how efficient that is. Again, the same reason that you just mentioned it. Like, you can find outfielders from time to time. So I don't know. Like, if Miguel Rojas had like I was going to say a little bit more pop, but I guess the answer should be if Miguel Rojas had any pop, it might be him. I'm not going to be here today. I don't know. Weird game. I have a sneaky suspicion we're going to see, because there's no line out there. One random book is hanging this 9. It would not surprise me at all if that 9 was not 9 in another hour or two.
Yeah, you and I might have a very different opinion of this game when we do the deeper dive later.
Yeah, just watch that in 4.5 hours where we could actually give you some thoughts when hopefully they name starters.
Don't come in 4.5 hours because I won't be there, but yeah.
Whatever, man. Math is hard. Blue Jays and Red Sox. Jays at home, 5.5 run implied total for the Jays, 5 run implied total for the Red Sox. It's like a 55-45 split. Ross Stripling and Nick Pivetta, neither guy picking up any ownership. Does that seem correct to you?
Yeah, two pretty dangerous offenses, two pitchers that aren't bad, but they're also not that inexpensive, and they're not really pitchers that I'm taking in tough matchups. So, yeah, I don't see much reason to go to the pitching here.
Okay. I agree and I disagree. Like, neither one of those guys makes me excited. I guess we're going to get to some of these guys, but there are a couple guys priced right above Stripling, and I guess to a lesser extent Pivetta. I mean, these guys are pretty close in salary, that are pulling a lot of ownership. That's a little bit interesting to me. Whereas I don't feel like the disparity between Ryan Yarbrough and Ross Stripling today should be 28% to 1%.
Yeah. I'm with you there. It's one of those. I mean, we talk about it. There's normally situations like this every slate where, if you want to use that as a spot to be contrarian, there's really no chance that Ryan Yarbrough is 28 to 1 to beat Ross Stripling today. But it's also not like. It's not a spot where like it's super necessary to do it, I don't think, but you can. Right. You certainly can if you want.
I mean, I legitimately have them as basically equals today, and even if that ownership is slightly different and it's like 24 to 4, that ratio is still broken, and that's like changing it pretty dramatically from a ratio standpoint. So it's not like I'm excited to get to these guys, but they do very clearly seem to me as under-owned pivots potentially. It's not great because the total's 10.5.
Right. Yeah. It's a really dangerous spot. I've said it a lot that I typically don't mind being relatively chalky at pitcher and being more contrarian with my bats because it accounts for more spots in my lineup. But, again, if you have like a popular stack and you need to be contrarian somewhere, this is definitely a spot you can go. Like, it's a risky spot, but Yarbrough just isn't beating Stripling, 27 out of 28 times or something.
Now, from a hitting perspective, that's where some of the ownership is coming in. Blue Jays on FanDuel pulling a ton of ownership, pulling a solid amount on DK as well. Red Sox a little bit less so. Devers on FanDuel in double digits in ownership. Plawecki on DraftKings in double digits in ownership. Those are the only two north of 10%. How do you feel about getting to the bats here? Because this seems like the place where everybody's going.
Yeah, feel pretty good. Favorable hitting conditions, or favorable hitter's park, I should say. Stripling so far this year has given up power. Like the strikeout numbers are good for Stripling, but 191 expected ISO to lefties, 211 to righties. So, and pretty decent pricing. I mean, JD Martinez, 4,800 on DraftKings. Devers and Bogarts are expensive at 5,800 and 5,400, but Alex Verdugo at 3,500 is a discount. Hunter Renfroe at 3,300. Jarren Duran, 2,300, assuming he's in the lineup. One of Boston's top prospects that was called up the other day. So you actually get some decent value on this Boston team, again, against the pitcher that has given up power this year.
Yeah, I'm happy to get to Boston. I actually have them a little bit ahead of the Blue Jays for this game, which is kind of interesting because they're a little bit behind them on the top stacks tool. But yeah, if I'm going anywhere here, offense seems to be the play. I don't even have like a take of, nobody's getting crazy ownership on DraftKings. On FanDuel, we've got someone like Vlad, who 4,500 dual eligibility, 23% ownership. But I mean, it's not wrong. But he's not pulling that same kind of love on DK because he's 6,300. How do you handle bats that get to that kind of price tag? Like, do you end up getting to teams like the Blue Jays a lot when you have those outlier prices for someone like Guerrero or even Semien at 5,800?
I mean, it's obviously difficult. It depends what pitching is available on the slate. But that's why, like looking at the top stack tool, 8.5% aggregate ownership going to Toronto. I assume that would be a lot higher if they weren't so expensive here. But yeah, I typically still manage to get there. It's like I kind of alluded to it on our All-Star game show the other day, but using something to boost your hitters when you create lineups. In my case, I use, a multiplier. So I multiply their salary. You mentioned using, more randomness, which also I think works. But yeah, doing something so that whatever, optimizer you use, in my case, Fantasy Cruncher, isn't just saying, oh, Vladimir Guerrero projects for 9 points or whatever. Like you need to do something to make it to account for the fact that hitter scoring is so, can get so high. But yeah, because I do that, I still get to these stacks.
It's kind of weird. You think about it in terms of other sports, and then you look, I mean, NFL, I guess, is similar to a degree, but Vlad Guerrero can blow his projection out of the water the first time he swings a bat. If Semien gets on and Bo Bichette gets on and Vlad puts one in the seats, like everything you've already projected for is gone, and he still has 4+ plate appearances coming up. That's why you need to do something to account for that sort of dramatic upside.
Yeah, it's kind of like if there was nothing to play in NFL except for those like deep threat wide receivers that get two or three targets a game. That's basically what like hitters are.
Right. Yeah. And it's so crazy to think about it like that. And it really you have to adjust. That's why that switching from basketball to baseball or baseball to basketball is such a stark difference. It usually takes a little bit to like get your mind right again. Anybody else you want to focus on in this game from an offense perspective? Like, who's your favorite bat here?
Favorite bat, I think, is JD. I really like the price there. I mean, 4,800. I think Verdugo is probably the best value. But I really like JD. Just I think he should be in that same price range as Bogarts and Devers.
Renfroe at 3,300, if he's in the lineup, looks pretty good to me at basically no ownership if you want to just try to buy something random, but that's more of like a GPP flyer type play.
I would also assume that I'm using Jarren Duran in a lot of Boston stacks.
Yeah, 2,300 in the outfield spot. Not too shabby.
Yeah.
Do you know much about him?
So Fangraphs has him as Boston's number 3 prospect, number 55 overall, has speed, 12 stolen bases at AAA this year, 28 at AA in 2019, projects.
His steamer projection is terrible.
What do you say?
His steamer projection is terrible.
Yeah, not much power, but yeah, I mean speed's there. He did hit 15 home runs at AAA this year also. I don't know. I know nothing about where the Red Sox AAA team plays, but
Tuckett.
I mean, I know that, but I don't know anything about their stadium.
Yeah, no, yeah, neither do I.
Like I don't know
if this were 15 years ago, I might. I don't any longer.
Like I don't know. What I'm saying is I don't know if he hit 15 home runs because he improved, or if he hit 15 home runs because he's like playing on the moon or something.
Right, exactly. Well, even if the power is not there, if he's getting on, there's certainly plenty of people that will be coming up behind him to bring him in. And at 2,300, it's not going to take a lot. Anything else for Blue Jays Red Sox?
No, I think that's it.
All righty. One more to go here. Tigers and Rangers. Tigers 4.2 run implied total. Rangers 4.3. Is this another one that I made up? I can't remember which. There's another game that doesn't have a line. Is this it? No, it's not it. Yeah, we're good here. Casey Mize going for the Tigers. Kyle Gibson going for the Rangers. Gibson actually pulling a little bit of ownership at 9K. He is 13% owned. Casey Mize at 6,600, just 3% owned. I have a bet on Casey Mize. If you watch the breakfast menu, myself and Ben Razzie, you can check that one out. But we'll start with the guy pulling the ownership. How do you feel about Kyle Gibson against the Tigers?
Feel good. He's reasonably priced at 9K. He's, pitching well this year. The strikeouts have still not been great, 21.7%. I think I say this every time he pitches, but he's still, to me, one of the most frustrating pitchers because his strikeout numbers, I think, should be a lot better. He has good breaking stuff to get swings and misses. He just doesn't throw it enough. But he's still been good in terms of run prevention, 0.71 home runs per nine, 3.89 xFIP is substantially higher than his 2.29 ERA. So you probably will see some regression coming in terms of, run prevention, but still, overall a pretty good pitcher in a pretty good matchup against Detroit.
So we've got this crop of three guys here, and I guess maybe we should call it four. Yarborough at 8,600, 28% owned. Greinke at 8,800, 23% owned. Kyle Gibson at 9K, 13% owned. And then Darvish at 9,200, 45% owned. I think because of the ownership, I like Kyle Gibson the most out of that entire group.
Yeah, I was going to say that pitching on the slate's kind of dicey in general, but yeah, there's not like Zach Greinke is fine, but he's not. It's not like because okay, so the biggest knock on Gibson is the strikeout percentage, right? At 9K, normally you can find pitchers that just strike out a lot more hitters than Kyle Gibson does. But on today's slate, you don't really have that. Like Zach Greinke's not a great strikeout guy. Ryan Yarbrough is fine, but he's not anything special. Darvish is, but Darvish has his own issues. So it's kind of just like there's a bunch of pitchers that I'd feel a lot more comfortable if they were $1,000 less, but they're not. And they're going to be rostered because that's what we have on this slate. So I'm with you. Like if we come back to do the deeper dive and Kyle Gibson's ownership is at 25% and it's, they're all around 25%, then I'll be a little bit less interested in Gibson. But right now with the way the ownership looks, I would rather just go there and hope for the best because I don't have tons of confidence in any of these guys.
Yeah, and it's not like it's not a good matchup. The projected Tigers lineup that I have in here is terrible. The run total isn't all that appealing for Detroit. Strikeout rates look great. There's not really any power threats. A scope, I guess, but the corpse of Miggy Cabrera is still out there.
Yeah, and also it should be a predominantly right-handed lineup. Like obviously we don't know what it is yet, but you should get 5 or 6 righties in there. Gibson has struck out 24.5% of righties this year, 18.5% of lefties. So the more righties, definitely the better for Gibson.
Do you have any interest in going to Casey Mize at 6,600? We've got Caleb Smith at the exact same price, pulling 19% ownership. Mize only at 3.
No, I'm still expecting Mize to be limited here. So I don't think that he has, the top end ability to get there. The Tigers had said going into the break that they were going to start limiting him. Unfortunately, I missed that until after I rostered him in a really good lineup, and then he was pulled at 50 pitches. But they had said going into the break that they wanted to limit him and that they were going to limit him coming out of the break as well, and then ramp him up basically so that he can get so that he's still pitching, until the end of the season, as opposed to being done at the start of September with his innings limit. So I'm not expecting much from Mize here. I'm expecting that you get 3 or 4 innings, 50 to 60 pitches. Just, doesn't give you enough of a ceiling.
Fair enough. Well, let's talk a little bit about bats. And in this case, they're not getting any ownership. The most owned player in this game, Joey Gallo on FanDuel at 10%. You get Jonah Heim on DraftKings at 9%. A lot of that happening just because he is, in fact, a catcher. And 2,300 makes it really easy to get him into a lineup. But these two teams are basically going unowned I have a bit of interest in the Rangers. Nothing too crazy, but they seem pretty easy to get to as a stack. It's not the most appealing place to go in the world, but I don't like. They're fine for me as a low-owned large field GPP stack because I think the value is there 1 through 6. It's not something I'm very happy about, but I think it is there.
Yeah, I'm with you. And individually, I mean, I really like Joey Gallo here.
Yeah.
Has tons of power. Casey Mize has only struck out 19.7% of lefties this year, so pretty good chance Gallo's putting the ball in play. He's allowed a 291 expected ISO to lefties. I mean, it sets up as a spot where Joey Gallo should have a lot of success. So I really like him a lot. I like Nate Lowe as well. He's another, left-handed bat that has some power. Obviously not to the same extent as Joey Gallo, but he's also $1,000 less expensive. So I like that too, man. But also, just Joey Gallo in particular, absolutely love him here.
Yeah, Gallo grades out really well. Clearly the highest upside bat in the Rangers lineup, but I have him second in terms of the value as well. And when you're getting that much upside and a price that 5,500 for him with this particular matchup and his amount of power, I'm not concerned at all. So I don't mind getting to the Rangers. It's nothing too crazy. They do have a pretty solid top value percentage. They're smack dab in the middle of the top stacks tool. But they're not pulling as much ownership as I think they should. They do have a little bit of leverage in that top stacks tool, and that combination plus the relatively easy to get to pricing doesn't bother me at all. I can't imagine rostering Tigers bats, however.
Yeah, I mean, if Gibson's ownership comes up some, I could see getting to the Tigers in large field tournaments, like for example the $5 on DraftKings that has 71,000 entrants. If Gibson's pulling ownership, then I think there's some merit to stacking against him. But just in terms of the matchup, Gibson has done a really good job of not giving up power to either side of the plate. There's not that many hitters in the Tigers lineup that are appealing to roster at all. So the only argument I'd really could end up making for the Tigers eventually is if Gibson's ownership increases.
I'm not going to ask you who your favorite bat in this game is because I'm thinking that it's unquestionably Joey Gallo.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Okay. So 3 games done. We could talk a little bit about our schedule for the rest of today. Coming up at 5 p.m. Eastern time, the MLB Deeper Dive with the two of us. Again, we will be back talking this slate. I assume we will have some starting lineups. I assume we'll actually have some starting pitchers, and a little bit more of this information will be firmed up, but Adam and I will be back breaking down each game once again at 5, leading directly into MLB Live Before Lock, 6 p.m. Greg and Eric breaking it all down once again, taking you up to lock, taking your questions, getting your plays. It's good stuff. Plus, MLB Top Pitchers tool is free. I was just touching on the Top Stacks tool, Top Pitchers tool, just as good as far as I'm concerned. If you're looking to figure out what you want to do pitching, you could figure out odds of being a top 2 pitcher, odds of being one of the 2 best values, comparing that information to ownership. Like, for example, I'm going to give away the top one now. It is free, so you guys can see it, but we've got Yu Darvish with a 25% chance of being a top 2 pitcher and a 45% ownership share. Might be an interesting spot to try to get a little bit away from him, try to go elsewhere. It's just a really difficult pitching day today, if we're being honest. It's kind of gross, but we're going to get into that over the next 8 more games that we have to touch on. But either way, head to Awesemo.com, check out the Top Pitchers tool, which is free today. Going to your team, Rays and Orioles, 5.1 run implied total for the Rays, just 3.4 for the Orioles, 67% chance to win for Tampa. It's Ryan Yarborough, as mentioned before. Spencer Watkins going for the Orioles. You just loading up on Spencer Watkins today?
Yeah, always.
Yeah, figured as much. 28% owned Ryan Yarborough on DK, 24% on FanDuel. I understand why Ryan Yarborough is 28% owned. I'm not entirely sure that I agree with it, given everything that's around him. What do you want to do with Yarborough in this spot? Obviously, the best spot from a implied run total perspective, Orioles dead last on the slate.
Yeah, it's just kind of he's getting ownership because it's a pitcher's park. The Orioles have a 3.4 implied run total. People like to pick on the Orioles in general. He projects pretty well because of the matchup. But again, it's an $8,600 pitcher that comes in with a 19% strikeout percentage. He doesn't walk guys, which is good. Helps him get a little bit deeper into games. Just a pretty average pitcher in Yarborough in a pretty good spot against Baltimore. So I think he's a good play, but I also, like you said, I don't think he should be pulling that much more ownership than pitchers priced around him. Yeah. He's not substantially better than any of these other guys. And Baltimore too. I mean, we talk about it a lot. Overall, they're not a good team, but the top slash middle of this order isn't bad. Like basically
No.
Mullins through Santander is guys that can hit. Once you get to the bottom of the order, it gets pretty ugly, and you should be able to Yarbrough should be able to handle those guys pretty easily. But it's not like you can just walk over this Baltimore team top to bottom. So it's a good matchup, but I also just don't even think it's like a super safe spot or anything like that.
It's really weird to me. I'm curious. This is the piece that I'm really interested in. Do you like getting to Baltimore bats because of, well, not even just like in general, but because of the ownership going to Yarbrough? I have no issue whatsoever going to Baltimore. At least first 7 dudes.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I mean, Austin Hayes at 2,500 gives you leverage against Yarbrough, and it's not like he's a bad hitter at all. Like he gives you upside and leverage, which is pretty nice. Anthony Santander at 2K is too cheap. I mean, Yarbrough's against righties this year, he has a 17.8% strikeout percentage. He's only allowed a 158 expected ISO, 208 actual ISO. So seems like he's probably gotten a bit unlucky in terms of power. But Austin Hayes is a pretty good hitter. He's 2,500. Ryan Mountcastle at 3,500 gives you plenty of upside. Santander at 2K flat. And then Mancini obviously is a good hitter as well, but he's more expensive. But you get value, you get leverage, you get some power upside here. I like going to like at least like mini stacks of these orders.
Yeah, if we're getting Ryan Yarbrough pulling 25% ownership, Baltimore has the second highest odds of being the top value stack today. And they have basically like for all intents and purposes, the lowest ownership share. The Dodgers, Giants, Cardinals, A's, Indians, Orioles, Angels, they're all below 1%. For all intents and purposes, those are all the exact same number. They're not getting any ownership whatsoever. They've got a pretty solid chance of being an excellent value stack. I have no problem at all going there, given Ryan Yarbrough's ownership. If Yarbrough wasn't pulling much ownership, there's probably just going to end up being better spots you can get to because it's just not going to be as necessary to try to grab the lowest implied total team on the slate. But for today, if that's the case, it seems pretty like there's no reason not to do it. Like Hayes at 2,500 is crazy. Santander at 2K is crazy to me. If you just want to fill in, maybe a great pairing with some of those expensive Blue Jays bats.
Yeah, and also just looking in the context of the entire slate, not only is the pitching pretty dicey, and that's what pushes up Yarbrough's ownership and makes it, that's the type of pitcher that I prefer to be leverage stacking against. Like I don't necessarily want to I don't want to be stacking against like Jacob deGrom just because he's popular. Right. Like, but Ryan Yarbrough is getting the ownership that he is on this slate solely because of the lack of talent elsewhere. It's not because of anything to do with him. But also when you look at the top stack pool, the Orioles are low, but the Mets have the highest top stack percentage on this slate at 9.2%. So that's not, there's not one or two offenses that are just, the Dodgers and Coors or the Blue Jays against the Orioles, from a couple of weeks ago where they're like 25%. The opportunity cost just isn't that high to going to a team with a lower implied run total like the Orioles.
How do you feel about the opposite side of this game? We've got Brandon Lau at 22% ownership, Franco, Meadows, both in double digits, Taylor Walls as well in double digits. The first 5 guys on FanDuel are pulling, 14% plus, sometimes into the 20s. Are you going the opposite direction? Are you trying to get Rays bats against the O's?
I really like the Rays bats, but the way it looks right now, they're not a team that I would get to a lot of in tournaments just because of the ownership that they're pulling. We have them with about a 6% chance of being the top stack, but about 11% aggregate ownership. I think it's a very good spot. Spencer Watkins certainly isn't someone that I'm shying away from taking hitters against. I think that the Rays lineup is good. They have plenty of power really throughout it. I mean, even looking at the bottom of the order with like Mike Zunino probably batting 8th, there's power there. But it just comes down to the ownership here. And right now we have them projected to be overowned. So if the slate started right now, I'd be underweight on Tampa in tournaments. If the ownership comes down, maybe by the deeper dive, I like them a lot more.
Yeah, I think we're in the same page. If the slate started right now, I would not be surprised if I didn't have the Rays, and I can guarantee you that I would not have 28% of Ryan Yarbrough or a number higher than that. To me, the Rays are right now the biggest fade for me, both hitting and pitching. Weird game.
Ownership wise, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, weird game. Just truly weird. But that's fine. I'll roster some Orioles for you, man. I know you're going to do it one way or the other. Such a homer.
Always
favorite bat in the game?
Brandon Lau?
Yeah, it probably is, right?
Well, so, I mean, favorite bat in terms of like who I think does well, like Brandon Lau. Favorite bat for tournaments is Austin Hayes.
We are on the exact same page. He has the highest like chance of hitting a target score for me, other than Lau, obviously. But Lau's pulling 22% ownership. Austin Hayes probably won't be owned, so it becomes pretty easy to get to Hayes, especially at 2,500. You can put him in any lineup you want. All right, Reds and Mets. Reds 5.4 run implied total. Mets 5.1. Vladimir Gutierrez, Jared Eichhoff. Nobody's picking up any ownership. No one should, as far as I'm concerned, unless you're seeing something that I'm not.
I didn't hear what you said.
Do you like either of the pitchers
in the Mets game?
Yes. Oh, you really didn't hear it. You didn't even know the game, man.
Yeah, no, I was answering something in chat and just completely not listening to you. But no, I don't like either of the pitchers in this game. No.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. Again, could I go to Gutierrez at no ownership if Kyle Muller's getting 12? Sure, but we're getting a little bit too cute for that. Bats, on the other hand, and the reason it's a little too cute is because these two teams have a implied total north of 5. Now, the Reds are pulling a ton of ownership. The Mets are pulling a little bit less than that. Let's start on the Cincinnati side, where we've got Jesse Winker over 20, Tyler Naquin over 20, a bunch of other guys in double digits. What do you want to do with the Cincinnati bats?
It's another spot where I think it's a very good spot. Eichhoff has only thrown about 12 innings this year, and he's someone that, years ago had some talent, but then he's dealt with a lot of injuries. We don't really know what to expect from him now, but so far it hasn't been particularly good over his 12 innings. He's allowed a 497 expected ISO to lefties. Again, only 113 pitches thrown to them, but not the best start there. 204 expected ISO to righties. Again, small sample size, but point being, this is a pitcher that's likely to just kind of not be very good anymore. And so far that's been the case. So it looks like a very, very good spot for Cincinnati. The park is favorable for hitting as well. The issue, like you said before, is just the ownership. There's just no teams on the slate that are there's not a whole lot of separation between the best teams and even the worst teams on the slate. So really none of them should be getting tons more ownership than others. And Cincinnati's looking like they're going to get a lot. So it's not like if I don't have Cincinnati in tournaments, it's not like I'm going to feel good about it. It's not that I don't think they're going to, have a good game. It's just that it's baseball and there's a lot of variance here. And I'm going to just end up going to teams that aren't getting that much ownership.
Yeah, I mean, given their current ownership, I think they're an actively bad play in large field GPPs.
The pricing is really favorable too.
It is. They rank really well in the top value metric, but their top stack metric isn't high in like at 6.7%. They're pulling more than double that in ownership. I don't mind getting to high owned stacks when it's, they're 15%, 16%. Like if someone breaks free, like even the Mets, the highest is the Mets at 9.2. If that was 14 or 15, you could eat a little bit more of that ownership because they're just so much more frequently going to be there. That's not this case. 6.7% getting owned at 14.3, way too high. Yeah, I'm not going to I don't want to try to win a 50,000 person tournament with the Reds.
Yeah, and the other issue is individually, they're all popular as well, pretty much. Every hitter, with the exception of Kyle Farmer, is projected for at least 10% ownership on DraftKings. Jesse Winker at 27, Tyler Naquin at 21. So sometimes you'll see a team getting a lot of aggregate ownership, but it's just like one or two players really pulling it up. And so the stack actually isn't that highly owned. Not the case here for Cincinnati, because not only are they in a good spot against Eichhoff, but they're just really cheap. I mean, Jesse Winker at 4,200 is one of the best hitter plays on the slate in terms of salary. But again, the ownership is there. Certainly, if you're playing a low-owned stack, use Jesse Winker as a one-off. There's no issue with that. But he's going to be in 25 to 30% of lineups most likely. Castellanos is cheap. Tyler Naquin at 2,500 is just an absurd price if he's batting fifth. So it's just the whole team is going to be so easy to get to that it's very likely they end up being more popular than they should.
I'm going to assume that we don't have Castellanos in the projected lineup right now because we haven't projected at 1% ownership. That wouldn't make a ton of sense to me if that were the case, which means that the Reds are actually owned more than that. Given everybody else's current ownership, $4,400 Castellanos would surprise me if he were projected for no ownership whatsoever, Yeah. Now, if we talk about the opposite side of this game, the Mets have the highest top stack odds. They're not picking up all that much ownership. I would much rather just get to the Mets than get to the Reds in this game. To me, a no-brainer. Even if I didn't see the ownership, I don't think they're that far apart in general. The ownership then just makes it significantly easier.
Yeah, agreed. Like, I think the biggest thing with the ownership is just that the Mets are appropriately priced and the Reds are way too cheap. But Vladimir Gutierrez hasn't really done anything to make me shy away from taking hitters against him. He has a 16.5% strikeout percentage for the season, 1.4 home runs per nine, 5.63 xFIP is about a run and a half higher than his ERA. Expected ISO to righties of 200, to lefties is 164. But, again, it's a good park for hitting. It's a pitcher that's not getting a lot of strikeouts. He does walk guys. And the Mets have plenty of power in this lineup. Nimmo, Alonso, McNeil, Davis, Smith, Conforto. These guys all can do damage. So I like that their prices are relatively expensive, like compared to the Reds on the other side of the game, because it will keep the ownership down. But I think it's a very good spot. Like, a lot of the reasons to like the Reds apply to the Mets as well. The park, obviously the same. Both facing very mediocre to be nice pitchers in this park. It's really just that the Mets are going to be a little bit more difficult to get into lineups because of their pricing, and that'll drive the ownership down.
I love Alonso here at 15% ownership. 5,900 is probably going to keep people away a little bit, but I don't mind that price tag. I really like the top half of this Mets lineup. Very easy to stack. 2, 3, 4, first base, second base, third base. So you're even getting some variation in the stack. It's not like we're just going outfield right out of the gate. To me, they are very clearly the top stack. I agree with our top stacks tool. The fact that they're not pulling that huge of an ownership share is very advantageous. There's enough value bats out there. There's enough value pitching out there. Not necessarily like at the bottom, but a lot of similarly priced guys that aren't pulling much ownership. To me, very easy to get to the Mets. Yeah,
agreed.
Winker, your favorite bat in this game?
Yeah. But again, the ownership is a little bit concerning. But yeah, I think like the first hitter from this game that I would expect to get to in cash is Jesse Winker.
I'm with you there. I think Alonso is probably my favorite overall bat, but at 5,900, you're paying the going rate as well.
Yeah, exactly. Alonso is probably my favorite tournament bat because of how expensive he is. I mean, he's still getting 15% ownership though, but I think it's a good spot for him, and obviously he gives you massive upside.
Bang. All righty. Braves and Padres. Is this the one that doesn't have the line? My mind is just mush today. There's whatever. It's not important. No, this is the one. So it's Yu Darvish versus undecided last I saw, which we'll see what that ends up being. I don't have it as undecided, but there is no
MLB has Kyle Muller.
Okay. I mean, that is who I have in right now. Oh wow. Now what's happening here? Oh, they moved the lines. That's not funny. All right. So we're going to say 4.3 run implied total for the Braves, 4.7 for the Pods. Kyle Muller, Yu Darvish. Muller at 12% ownership on DraftKings. Yu Darvish at 45% ownership. So let's start there. What do you think of that Darvish ownership? To me, I understand no Acuna in this lineup any longer. 45% feels pretty high.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's a watered down Braves lineup with no Acuna. It's also a very favorable price point at 9,200 for Darvish, because you compare him to most of the other pitchers on the slate, and he just has such better strikeout stuff. Like 29.8% strikeout percentage for Darvish this season compared to 20% for Yarborough for $600 less. It's just such a drastic gap there. I understand why he's getting the ownership. I think that I'll get a lot, especially on teams that aren't particularly popular, like my stacks. So I get it. I'm just also not super confident in it, because we do know that Darvish is capable of imploding pretty quickly. Is also dealing with a hip injury, so there's at least a little bit of a question mark there.
And he's unquestionably one of your cash pitchers. Like that, we don't have to get too crazy for that. That's just going to happen, or at least I think so. But it's not like this is a great strikeout matchup against the Braves. I mean, there are a couple guys in this lineup that don't strike out all that frequently just to begin with. I would like to be on the opposite side of this 45%. Clearly you're getting to him, but I think if you're coming into if Darvish is 45% owned, I don't mind coming in at like 25, 30. There are plenty of other options, I think, in other combinations that you can get to. This is though one of those spots where I don't have a ton of interest getting to the Braves bats on the opposite side.
Yeah, I think it's pretty tough to get there. I mean, if Darvish does pull 45-50% ownership, again, the larger the tournament, the more likely you should be looking to the Braves because they do at least have some high upside hitters, with Swanson,
Oh yeah.
Freeman, Albies, Peterson, like they're all fine. So I think in the largest field tournaments, I'll get to some Atlanta. In smaller field, higher stake stuff, Atlanta, not a team I'd be looking at.
Padres bats, on the other hand, though, Tatis at 20% ownership, no one else pulling all that much. Do you get to San Diego today? They are sort of middle of the pack in top stack odds, not really great value. They're owned right on the number. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, Kyle Muller's had some success in his limited time so far, but there's just so much talent in the Padres lineup. They're pretty much always one of the highest upside offenses that you can get to. So I do like them here. And, like you said, they're not projected to be over-owned, which is nice. Tatis, obviously one of the best shortstop plays every time that he plays. Manny Machado, really high ceiling, also very expensive. But, Pham is fine. If Myers is in the lineup, he's pretty cheap. You can, if you're stacking, you can go to the left-handed bats as well. That'll, help pull down the total ownership of your stack. So right now, I don't think the Padres are like a top stack, but they are one that I would expect to be getting to, just because they do. They have a high ceiling, but like Muller's unlikely to get a lot of ownership, so you're not
12% right now.
What'd you say?
12% right now.
Yeah, so I mean it's decent, but like he's not someone that I would be stacking against just because of his ownership. The Padres, aren't at the top in terms of top stack percentage, and they're not under owned. They're kind of just owned where they should be. So I think it's a team that looks pretty good. They'll be a team that I get to, but right now they don't look like a team that would be like one of my most popular stacks.
If this ownership holds, he's at 12%. That's the second highest number of anybody at 8,500 or below. My advice to you would be to not play him in a single lineup. There's no incentive of playing him at 12% ownership when no one else anywhere near him, either direction in salary, is pulling any ownership outside of Caleb Smith. I just don't want to be there.
Him being Kyle Muller?
Yeah. I think that's like an actively bad play at 12% ownership.
I mean, he does have a lot of strikeout upside. The matchup is just brutal.
Yeah, I just don't see the need to be there if there are 8 other guys that are very, very similar at the exact same price that aren't getting owned at all.
Well, I don't really know that they're similar in terms of strikeout stuff, but I still get your point.
I mean, they're similar to me, at least. Like, I have him at 4.8 strikeouts, just guys around him. 5.3, 4.7, 5.1, 5.1, 4.6 is Caleb Smith, which could probably be a little bit higher, but he's actually the one getting the ownership too. So I don't know. I don't see it. I don't want it. Yeah. No Kyle Muller for me.
Yeah. Like for me, it's mostly the matchup, but like he struck out 31% of hitters at AAA this year. He's at 31% through his first 4 major league starts. I do think there is a ceiling there. It's mostly just the matchup scares me.
Let's see where he's at. Wow, 4th highest top pitcher odds. So maybe I should shut up.
I was gonna make a comment that you reading off your shitty strikeout projection for Kyle Muller didn't change my stance, but
that's fair. You should have. That would have been spot on. Favorite bat in this game that isn't Fernando Tatis?
I mean, Machado kind of feels like cheating, but so I'll say Tommy Pham since he's at least at a different price point.
Yeah, that was going to be my answer as well. All righty, let's keep this one moving.
I do like Jock Jam's one-off if he's leading off at 3,300. That's another way that you can get leverage against Darvish without having to go to that full Brave stack.
It makes me so happy that he's on Atlanta now. I've liked him for so long, so it's just not that I like cheer for Atlanta any longer, but it helps. MLB Strategy Show. One gigantic word. No spaces at all. That gets you a nice little deal. You get 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus, whether that's just regular projections, ownership, premium slack, top stacks, top pitchers, every single sport. It may be MLB Strategy Show in the promo, but it's access to everything. 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus, $29.95. It's a really nice price tag. You guys should use that promo code. We don't really have any active promos going on right now. Each show's got their own. This is the one for the MLB Strategy Show, and I think you should use it. One, makes me look a little bit better, but two, it's really a good deal. We've got a ton of content, and while we are in this lull where the NBA is starting to go away, we still have golf. We've got esports. We've got the NFL coming up fast and furious. It's going to be here before you know it. Time is moving very quickly. MMA every weekend, NASCAR every weekend. We've got tennis on the back end as well. Come check out everything we have to offer behind the paywall at awesemo.com. Use that promo code MLB Strategy Show. One gigantic word. And now we move on to the Astros and the Indians. 5.3 run implied total for the Stros, 3.7 for the Indians. Zach Greinke, JC Mejia. I think that's how you say it. I don't know. We're going to go with Mejia. 8,800 for Greinke, 23% ownership. Are you going to Greinke today? Because the matchup looks pretty good. Second lowest implied total on the slate for the Indians.
Yeah, I mean, decent matchup, decent pitcher in Greinke. Again, it's just one of these spots where on a lot of slates, I wouldn't really be going to an $8,800 Greinke because I typically don't try and pay $8,800 for a guy with a strikeout percentage below 20%. But there's in that price range, that's kind of what you get on this slate. You know, Gibson's at 21%, Yarbrough's at 19, Greinke's at 18.5. You know, just again, like an average pitcher that I think is overpriced relative to his talent level, but for the slate, he's priced about where he should be. So yeah, I mean, I assume I'll get to Greinke just because of a lack of alternatives.
I agree. He's owned exactly like he should be in a group of guys that are mostly owned exactly like they should be. I don't really have anything to add. You clearly are going to get to him. Do you get to any Mejia?
I don't think so. Not really a matchup I'm looking to target against Houston. I don't think that the savings at pitcher are going to be that important on this slate, you know, paying down for someone at 6,100, just not that many expensive bats that I think I really need to pay up for. For the season, he's not been terrible, but, you know, only an 18% strikeout percentage. He's struggled with power, 1.78 home runs per 9. Just, I don't really see myself getting there.
Bats in this game because neither team is pulling any real ownership. Obviously, Cleveland's going to be a little bit of a tough sell unless you want to get against that Greinke ownership. Astros, expensive. You go on either side of this game. 5.3 run implied total looks nice.
What'd you say?
I said 5.3 run implied total for Houston looks nice, but I don't know if it's really making a difference.
Yeah, I mean, so I like the Indians in larger field stuff just to go against that Greinke ownership. You know, you do have some good bats on the Indians, particularly Jose Ramirez and Franmil Reyes, give you a lot of upside. And then on the other side, though, I do like Houston here. Man, he has been lights out against righties this year. He's struck out 28% of right-handed hitters. He's allowed virtually no power with an expected ISO below 100, but he's been pretty bad against lefties. 16.7% strikeout percentage, 199 expected ISO. When you talk about the Astros, you know, the righties at the top of the order, you know, particularly Altuve and Correa, are good enough that I'm not too concerned about Mejia's splits. But then you have lefties in Brantley, Yordan Alvarez, Kyle Tucker that all can do a lot of damage. So I really like those left-handed bats. Alvarez, Tucker in particular, I think give you a lot of power upside. Michael Brantley's cheap. And then you just round it out with good hitters in Altuve and Correa. So I do like the Astros as a stack. Right now, not pulling much ownership either, which is nice.
I'm a little surprised to see Cleveland be at the bottom of the top stacks tool. Like, I'm not saying that they should be at the top either, but I wouldn't have expected the absolute bottom. I think that's going underrepresented. I think they should be a little bit higher, just given the power for Ramirez and Reyes and Brantley, or Bradley rather, in that core of the lineup. I'd be happy to try to buy a couple home runs against Greinke in this spot, just hoping that it's a blow-up spot.
Yeah, you don't even need the full stack them. I mean, just run that two-man with Reyes and Ramirez or Bradley. Like,
yeah. I mean, Bradley at 4,400 at first, like a first-third outfield combo is really easy to get to.
Yep.
So I think they're going a little bit underrepresented. At no ownership, no one's going to be surprised if like two of those three guys go yard today. It's not likely, but that could be a difference maker.
Like right now we have Jose Ramirez projected for the most ownership on the Indians at 1.3%.
Right.
Like, and then you combine that.
It's worth the shot.
Right. And not only is he low owned, but if he does have a big game, which he's certainly capable of, it's taking points away from the 23% on Greinke as well.
Exactly. Yeah. If Greinke weren't pulling much ownership, you wouldn't feel the need to do it. But there's a path on Cleveland, and you get the bonus of the fact that Greinke's in a quarter of the lineups. Favorite bat in the game? Ramirez?
I I mean, in tournaments, I love Ramirez, but no, I think favorite bat for me is it's one of the lefties on Houston. Alvarez
Brantley.
is like Alvarez is the top end guy. Brantley, I think, is a
Yeah.
really good value. I like Tucker too. Yeah, it's hard for me to separate them because they're all like they're all different price points too. But I'll say Alvarez just because he's the best hitter of the three.
Cardinals and Cubs. This is the one that I've been looking for that has no line. Is that out yet? No, it does have a line. It's just split down the middle. Oh my God. 4.5 on both sides. Coin flip. Jake Woodford, Alec Mills, no ownership at all really going to these guys. 2% a piece. Woodford at 4,800. Alec Mills at 6,700. Are you getting any pitching here? Because my guess is no.
I'm interested in Mills.
Ooh, talk to me.
He's got a 21% strikeout percentage this year. So he's in line with those $8,800 guys that everyone's paying for. He's been good. 3.13 xFIP, only walking 5% of hitters. He, for a lot of the season, has been limited, but in his last two outings, he's thrown 92 and 95 pitches against Cincinnati and Philly. Was solid in both of those games. Struck out 9 in 5 2/3 against the Reds. Struck out 5 in 5 2/3 against the Phillies. He's only 6,700. The Cardinals are, a mediocre. They're not a great offense. They're not a team I'm really afraid to take pitchers against. Like I don't seek it out, but I'm not, too concerned about it. I just think if he's not getting any ownership, he's, to me, just as good a DFS pitcher as these $8,800 guys that everyone's paying for.
I'll let you have this one. I don't have anything to add.
I think
I'm not there.
You're right. That's a genius move.
Oh man. If I said that right now, people would just assume this was a hostage video and I was like reading off a prompter or something. Bats, on the other hand, the Cardinals are not getting any ownership at all, clear across the board. Contreras and Rizzo for the Cubs in double digits on DK. Nobody picking up any love on FanDuel. Are you looking to get to more Cardinals, Cubs, or neither for this one?
More interested in going to the Cubs because, again, I think I think Alec Mills is good. They're in the middle of the road in terms of top stack percentage at 5.5%. Ownership is about there as well. Looking at Jake Woodford's numbers, he's made 17 appearances for the Cardinals this year. None of them were starts, so you're not expecting him to go deep into this game. It's never that appealing taking bats against a bullpen game in today's baseball, I don't think. But you do still get some upside at pretty reasonable prices from the Cubs. Anthony Rizzo at 3,700 looks like a pretty good value. We know that Contreras, Baez, Bryant give you power upside. So I don't mind the Cubs here. Again, not one of my favorite stacks. The thing I'm most excited for from this game right now is Alec Mills at 2% ownership.
There we go. Favorite bat in this game?
Rizzo at 3,700, I guess.
Yeah, I think it kind of has to be. I don't. That price is just a little bit too low for what he brings to the table in this one. I would have a hard time picking someone else. So yeah, I'm with you, Rizzo. Time to talk a little bit about the presenting sponsor of this show. That would be PrizePicks. I don't know if you've been playing at PrizePicks or not, but you certainly should. You don't have to worry about sharks, optimizers, mass entry. You're just picking 2, 3, 4, 5, and you get paid out on that. So if you pick a 5-player lineup, you can get up to 10x your entry fee, whether that's NBA, MLB, WNBA, NFL, even esports. You can do it. Download the app in the App Store or Google Play, or go to the website, use the promo code Awesemo and get up to $100 instant match deposit bonus. I don't say this lightly. When you can get $100 instant match deposit bonus, you should just take advantage of that. We've got tools on the site that can help you out tremendously. We're going to give you a couple picks right now. Like I'm going to hit you with this one. Over under 7 fantasy points for Joey Gallo today against Detroit.
Well, 3 home runs, I think, comes up to more than 7. So
fair enough. Seems like a pretty healthy number. How about this one? I'm going to give you a weirder one. This is a game we're not talking about. Minnesota Twins at 5:10 Eastern time. They are early today. 4.5 fantasy points for Nelson Cruz.
I know nothing about this game.
4.5 fantasy points just in general feels pretty low.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Not going to take much for Nelson Cruz to get that bad boy. Nelson Cruz goes yard. He goes over 4.5. Those are some of the lines you could look at PrizePicks. You're going over or under a fantasy score, or you could look at their single stat plays. So someone like Josh Bell, over under 1.5 hits plus walks. You can get run plus RBI props, total bases, runs just in general. You can go a couple different directions if you want to. Highly recommend you go check out PrizePicks and use that promo code Awesemo. Don't leave free money on the table. $100 instant match deposit bonus when you use that promo code. Diamondbacks and Pirates, 5-run implied total for the D-backs, 4.5 for the Pirates. Caleb Smith, Chase DeYoung. Caleb Smith pulling 19% ownership, but the Pirates are also pulling quite a bit of bat ownership. We need to hash this one out because this is the most confusing spot on the slate. Would you rather get to Caleb Smith as a pitcher or the Pirates bats? Or is it both?
I'd rather get to Smith. I mean, he's a good strikeout pitcher. He's got a 24% strikeout percentage this year. He's cheap at 6,600. The matchup against the Pirates is not bad at all. The issue is Smith, also isn't a great pitcher. I mean, he's got like a 13% walk percentage. He's certainly capable of not getting deep into this game. But I think that the reason Smith is getting ownership has to do with the upside he gives you in terms of strikeouts. I think the reason that the Pirates are getting ownership has to do with the fact that like the entire lineup is minimum salary. Exaggerating a bit, but they're very, very inexpensive. So I think it's more that the Pirates are showing up like they're in an okay spot. They do have 4.7 implied run total, but I think that the ownership is also just a function of how easy it is to mix them into lineups. Whereas Smith's ownership is a function of the likelihood he actually scores a lot of fantasy points.
Pittsburgh with the highest odds of being the top value stack of the day. They also have the 6th highest odds of being the top stack tool. When those two things usually run in tandem, while they do show up as over-owned, I don't see that as big of a problem because they're kind of checking both boxes. Yep. So I don't mind it as much. And then you also get into the fact that Caleb Smith is potentially in a 5th of the lineups. I don't mind at all getting to the Pirates. And you're still getting like Ben Gamel at 4%, Nagowski at 6%, Polanco at 3%. You kind of just need to dodge Hayes and your stack's not really all that big of a problem. Now, Hayes looks like a good play, but I think there are ways around it.
Yeah, and I think that Smith's ownership, like you said, is a good point as well. Like the way that I typically just kind of get an idea for what stacks I'll end up with is, are they at the top of the top stacks tool? Are they going over-owned or are they going under-owned rather? And are they going up against a pitcher getting ownership? The Pirates are, a little bit over-owned if you just look at chances of success versus ownership. But like you said, they're also very good values and they check the box, Smith getting like 20% ownership. So it helps to mitigate the fact that they're a little bit over-owned. So I do think that you can get to the Pirates here. I fully expect to have both sides of this in tournaments.
Agreed. How do you want to deal with this Diamondback stack? Obviously, pulling a little bit more ownership just based on the fact that Cole Calhoun at the flat 2K is projected for 30% ownership. Everybody else is pulling some ownership, to be sure, but Calhoun is very much an outlier, as he should be. What do you want to do with the Diamondbacks on the opposite side?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because Chase DeYoung's been pretty bad this year. 296 expected ISO to righties, 211 to lefties. The Diamondbacks also are pretty bad. Do really like Cole Calhoun. Obviously, the ownership sucks, but 2K flat for Cole Calhoun is insane. But the rest of the stack, I think, looks pretty good too. I mean, Eduardo Escobar and Josh Rojas are both, I think, reasonably priced for the matchup. Christian Walker gives you a lot of power. And like I said, DeYoung has not, it's not like he's only getting lit up by lefties. Righties have had success as well. So I think a 3K Christian Walker looks really good. I do like the Diamondback stack here. Right now, they are projected to, that's Atlanta, not Arizona. Right now, they're projected to be way over-owned, which will, drive me away from them. But if that ownership comes down, I do like the spot for the Diamondbacks.
Favorite bat in the game? That isn't Cole Calhoun, I guess, in a cash scenario.
Yeah, I was going to say Cole Calhoun easily. Christian Walker.
Okay. Need Brian Reynolds for me?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that if, to me, it was either Walker, Reynolds, or Hayes.
Okay. 2 games to go, guys. Don't be afraid to hit that like button. 325 concurrent viewers, 69 likes. We need to get that number north of 100 stat. So if you're here and you haven't hit it yet, show us some love. Hit that thumbs up. Let's get 100 likes. A's and Angels, 4.2 run implied total for the A's, 4.3 for the Angels. Cole Irvin, Shohei Ohtani. Irvin not really pulling much ownership. Ohtani at 16% at 8,700. Are you getting to Ohtani today?
Yeah, I mean, why not? He's got more strikeout upside than all of the pitchers priced around him. So I think,
Yeah.
That is good. He's got the second highest strikeout percentage on the entire slate behind Kyle Muller at 30.7%. So if you exclude Muller in his 4 starts, he leads the slate in strikeout percentage. Like, that the floor is pretty low. Like, Ohtani, can get into trouble. He does have walk issues. He's walked 12.5% of hitters this year. And Oakland isn't the easiest lineup to get through, but the park is fine. The weather looks favorable for pitching, and Otani's just got more strikeout upside than all of the other pitchers in that price range. So, right now he's getting 16% ownership, Greinke getting 23, Yarbrough getting 28. I'd rather be getting more Ohtani.
Are you getting any Cole Irvin?
No.
I didn't think so. The better question then here is, are you getting A's or Angels bats? Neither one of these teams are pulling any ownership. Oakland doesn't look particularly good in the top stack tool or top value, but the Angels are the 3rd best odds of being the top value stack. Is that interesting to you? I mean, we get Jack Mayfield and Brandon Marsh at the flat minimum 2K. You get Phil Gosselin at 2,100. They are a bat short, obviously. What do you want to do here?
I think I'm more likely to just kind of be picking guys out of the Angels lineup, because Ohtani not being hitter eligible to me just ruins that stack. It's you're losing the number 2 hitter or leadoff hitter, depending what the lineup is. You're losing obviously the best hitter in the lineup, so it makes the stack a lot less interesting to me. But if Phil Gosselin's batting cleanup at 2,100, that's fine. Max Stassi is certainly a reasonable catcher option. Brandon Marsh is one of the Angels' top prospects who was just called up. He's 2K flat. Has power and speed. So, like, I don't mind going to those guys individually, but Cole Irvin also, I don't think, is a terrible pitcher. Like, he's done a pretty good job at limiting power this year. He's not a very good strikeout guy, and that's why I'm not really interested in DFS. But I don't know. I'm not that interested in full Angel stacks. I think I'm more likely to just be like mixing them in.
Yeah, to me, this is the least appealing bats game, and I don't have really anything to add.
Yeah, like the
best bat in the game is Shohei Ohtani, and you can't take him.
What'd you say?
The best bat in the game is Shohei Ohtani, and you can't take him.
Right. I mean, like, the A's would start to have more interest to me if in a later ownership run, Ohtani starts pulling like 30-35% ownership or something. But if he's going to get 15-16%, I'm probably just going to be playing a lot of Ohtani.
Closing it out in a relatively easy way, Dodgers and Giants, 4.1 run implied total for the Dodgers, 3.9 for the Giants. Tony Gonsolin, Kevin Gausman, 7% ownership for Gonsolin, 22 for Gausman. What do you want to do with pitching here? I don't really have much to add. Kevin Gausman, to me, is properly owned. I don't have anything to add on Irvin, and the bats are going to be a tough sell.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much where I'm at. Gonsolin is a little more expensive than I would like for a pitcher that's likely to throw 70 to 80 pitches, but he's also good, so I'm not really looking to take Giants bats against him. Gausman, it's a scary matchup, but he's been extremely good this season. Has the second highest strikeout percentage behind Ohtani at 30.5%. Walks are only at about 7%. He's been really, really good. The matchup obviously is scary. I would like it if his ownership came down a little bit, but even at about 22%, I can see getting to some Gausman just because of the lack of upside elsewhere on the slate. Like, in terms of ceiling, Gausman's is just so much higher than those 86 to 9K guys, 8,600 to 9K guys, and it's not like he's that much more expensive. But I also do have interest, again, mostly in the larger field tournaments, in going to some Dodger stacks, because like Gausman's going to get ownership, and the Dodgers are still really, really good. Obviously, if Mookie Betts is not in the lineup, it knocks them down a little bit. Bellinger has really struggled this year, but it's still a very dangerous offense where they're getting no ownership and Gausman's getting 22%. So I do have some interest there in larger field tournaments, but ultimately there's not a lot that I like here outside of, getting to Gausman.
Yeah, and nobody's really grading out all that well for me. Wade and Dickerson both get into like a green value metric for me. It's not anything that I'm interested in. So I don't really have much else to sell for Dodgers Giants. I am done unless you're done. Or not done.
I'll just mention it here instead of answering in chat. Someone mentioned Gausman's listed as out on DraftKings. That should go away. He was scratched from his last start because his wife had to go to the hospital because of complications with her pregnancy. He's expected back today.
There we go. Any final thoughts on this slate? Anything you want to touch on before we get out of here?
I think it's one of those slates where it should be really fun for tournaments because there's just not a lot of stuff that looks really good. Like, there wasn't a lot of stuff that we loved on the slate. So the ownership just plays a really big role, I think, and you shouldn't be afraid to just take stands on low owned plays, because I think that there's a lot of different ways that, this slate can go.
That'll do it, everybody. Adam and I will be back again in 5 hours to run through this one with a little bit more information, which will be nice. Again, don't be afraid to hit that like button as you leave. Good luck tonight, everybody. Thank you to PrizePicks. We will talk to you again later today.